Hey, I'm Ashley James and I'm here with Women's Health UK for this episode of My Body, My Story. So I'm currently in my second trimester of my second pregnancy. I've been on a journey with my body. I feel like I've been on a journey with my body for the last decade, but especially in the last 18 to 24 months because I have my son Alfie who's nearly 2, and so I went through all of pregnancy and postnatal and breastfeeding and then kind of feeling back to normal in what a new sense of the word. And obviously now I'm going through pregnancy again, my body's going through all of these changes. I really have a newfound love and respect for my body. However, if I'm being honest, I do find some of the changes that I'm experiencing quite, I'm going to say, overwhelming. And the area that I struggle with the most is actually my boobs, because I've always had such big boobs since I was 13. I was a 30 double G. So with that has come lots of unwanted attention, hypersexualization. I was really happy when I finished breastfeeding and they kind of deflated and I felt like I could wear all the tops that I never got to wear. So now that they are like filling up again, I'm noticing that I'm struggling with how big they are getting, and I know they're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until they deflate again, hopefully. So that would be the area that I'm currently trying to be kind to myself about. So I'd say that I feel quite lucky that growing up I never had any real body hang-ups. I remember when I was about 11 or 12, I got into my head that I just really wanted big boobs. I manifested big boobs. When I was 13, I was a 30 double G. I don't remember ever being like an A to a D cup. I probably didn't notice, and then my mum was like, whoa, she needs a bra. I remember going into Licenza, which was like the really cool lingerie for teens, the shop at the time, and they had all these really nice prints like Winnie the Pooh, and they just didn't go above a C or a D cup. So I went to another store, which I won't name and shame, but it's where my gran shops for her lingerie. So I just never felt like I could wear like cute things. And then the comments kind of came from boys at school, especially older boys at school. It would always be like really sexual and pervert comments about my body and if I was having sex and stuff like that. And I was literally 13. And so that was quite like a sharp awakening. And I think as a consequence of that, the teachers started to really, how would I say, I guess shame me or I guess they were trying to protect me, but they did it in a way that taught me that my body was something to be ashamed of. So when I'd get ready to go to the disco or whatever it might be, they'd say, no, Ashley, you can't wear that. You have to cover up, put something on more appropriate. You don't want to distract the boys. You don't want to distract the teachers. To be perfectly honest, I would say that it made me quite misogynistic, because I was taught that if you wanted to be taken seriously, then you should cover up, that certain girls who, you know, wore low-cut tops and everything else, that they were asking for it. So I kind of adopted that belief system. I would say that my mindset started to shift around my relationship with my body, specifically my boobs, as I stepped into my late 20s. I was so fed up of comments like, who have you got the girls out for? Or even like wearing tops that I thought were nice and then leaving the house and, you know, whether it was catcalling or going to bars and realising that people were staring at your top. I started to really think about why that happens. Why is it that teachers or parents would say to girls, you don't want to distract boys? Why don't we say to boys, you shouldn't objectify girls? I remember an ex-boyfriend once said to me that I was frumpy, and it really stuck with me because obviously as a teenager I was told that I was slutty. So then I kind of adopted this, I wanted to be taken seriously approach, and then I was told I was frumpy, and I remember thinking like, I just can't win. What's most important to me is knowing that I feel good, knowing that my body shape and my body type is not my promiscuity, it is not my morality, and it also doesn't warrant unwanted attention, so I don't have to put up with it. And sometimes it's really silly things, you know, like your friend being like, oh, who have you got the girls out for? And just having a conversation where it's like, hey, by the way, can you not say that because it makes me feel really uncomfortable, or it makes me second guess my outfit choices. I would say it still happens. Like, I was actually quite shocked that when I was breastfeeding, my own personal relationship to my boobs were like, wow, I'm doing this really heavenly, earthy thing, and it felt like reclaiming my own body from sexualization. But then the attitudes online, and especially when I went onto TV and I ended up having to breastfeed, it wasn't planned. My child was hungry, and at the time he didn't take a bottle or anything else, so for me to work I had to bring him along. And there were all these comments about me being an attention seeker and how I was doing it for attention, and I remember thinking, like, how is feeding a baby an attention-seeking thing? What I found really astonishing is that my partner Tommy, if it's a hot day, he can whip off his top, walk through the park, happy as Larry. Not one person will accuse him of trying to attract attention from women. So why is it when we dress, it's presumed that we do it for male attention? I can't even breastfeed my child without commentary, yet a guy can just walk down the street because it's hot. So society or the patriarchy is the problem and not us. And I hate the fact that there's so many women who have to second guess even wearing a vest top because they're worried that people will think that they have their boobs out for male attention. I loved my first pregnancy. Some people don't love their pregnancies, and that's fine, but my first pregnancy, I think because it was the beginning of lockdown, it was a really scary time, it gave me this really positive thing to focus on, and I actually loved seeing my body change. I honestly felt like I was like part of Mother Earth, just like experiencing this miracle. I remember being like, I can't believe my body's growing eyelashes. I didn't actually struggle with the body changes, but I did struggle with the confidence because I didn't know what to wear, and I felt like I'd really learnt my style and how to feel good, and I kind of forgot that clothes, whether you're into fashion or not, like clothes make you feel good. Bra thing was a total nightmare. Now I just wear underwired, non-underwired ones because then you don't have to worry about the sizes. What I did find hard was when I got to about 28 weeks pregnant, I could no longer exercise, and I've gone long past the days of seeing exercise as something to do to punish your body or to shrink yourself. It's a really important part of my mental health, you know, releasing anxiety. I loved boxing, especially thinking of like ex-boyfriends' faces and stuff, and running, that was my big thing. So I really struggled when I had to stop exercising around 28 weeks, but it was the right thing for my body, and I was recommended that it was no longer advisable for me. Do you know what? I was really excited to give birth because also I was really excited to uncover the mystery of what happens to a woman's vagina when she gives birth, because I feel like everyone would be like, mother and baby doing well, and I remember being like, how could she be doing well when she's pushed a baby out of her vagina? Like, what happens and how does it recover? But I had it in my head that postnatal recovery was this really clear cut, 6 weeks, whether you have a C-section or a vaginal birth, it'd be 6 weeks, then you get the sign off, then you go back to exercise, then you go back to normal. And I didn't realise that physical checks don't always happen, especially in lockdown, but I think now they should happen so you can push for them, but they don't always happen. But also recovery is really personal, as you'd imagine, so it actually took me closer to 20 months to recover from my birth, and I had tummy separation, I had prolapse, so loads of things going on, and that's when I got really angry at the narrative around postnatal recovery, that it's, you know, bounce back culture, they call it, like, are you going to bounce back or not? We go through this incredible experience, you know, we bring life into the world, a physical change and a mental change and a psychological change. And when I was experiencing things like incontinence, I honestly didn't care if I'd lost weight or not. I just really wanted to know that I could like leave the house and have confidence that my body would work. It took a year for my bones to even move back. So even if I had wanted to bounce back, I wouldn't have been back in my old clothes until my bones moved back. So I just wish there was less pressure and less chat about our weight, because even if you don't fit in your old clothes anymore, like, your body is still worthy of praise and deserving, and you can get really nice clothes in other sizes. So I feel like we need to get out of this narrative that we should fit into clothes, because it's literally material that is meant to fit us, not the other way around. I went into birth really excited about it. I'd done a hypnobirthing course. Also, I'm a marathon runner. I say I'm a marathon runner, I've run 2 marathons, but I have run marathons, so I know what it's like to push your body beyond the limits of pain. And, you know, it's like that mental battle of one more step, one more step, one more step. So I felt excited for the challenge of childbirth, and I had a really strong, positive mindset that I knew that I would be able to push my body to the limit, basically. And I also, because I'd done the courses and I'd read some books, I knew about the different pain relief options. When my contractions started, I remember bouncing on the ball. I was 2 weeks overdue, so I was like ready at this point. And I remember being like, oh, I think this is labour. because this is the thing, like, you don't really know what to expect. I messaged the midwife, I was timing all my contractions, everything was going really well. So that started at about 7 p.m. At 4 a.m. they were regular enough that we decided that I'd make my way into hospital. The midwife met me there. That was kind of when things started to go a bit south, that it wasn't the pain of the contractions, because that was kind of what I expected. I felt like I was dying. That's the only way I can explain it, and it was constant. So I'd been told, take snacks, take an iPad, you'll watch loads of stuff between the contractions, you'll get really hungry. I honestly was like, something isn't right. I know retrospectively that because I had really bad pelvic girdle pain, my pelvis was inflamed, and then I went on to give birth to a 9.5 baby, which is essentially a heifer lump. There was just a lot of pressure on my pelvis. So I started to say to the midwife, actually, I was like, cut him out. I wasn't polite. She said, no, that wouldn't be an option anymore because it started. So I was like, okay. So then I decided I wanted an epidural. Basically nothing came. I kept asking, and then I kept asking Tommy to ask. And then they kept saying, well, why don't you try and go in the water? So I go in the water for a bit, and basically this just went on. And I remember the point that my mind sort of snapped out of that, I'm a marathon runner, one more step, was when the midwife team said, and fair enough because they've been there for a really long time at that point, we're gonna go home for a nap and we'll be back before the birth. And I remember thinking, well, where do you live? And like, how long are you gonna nap for? And like, how long am I gonna feel like this? I ended up giving birth naturally with no pain relief. And it was a really traumatic experience because it was honestly like the most excruciating pain for the longest period of time. And I remember, you know, you're told, oh, when the baby comes, like, you forget about it all, you have this rush of love, and I didn't feel like that. I remember just being like, what have you done to me? It took a while for me to kind of process that experience, and so I requested my birth notes, which anyone can do. Basically, in the birth notes, it said she was coping fine. So I was almost expecting them to have said that I couldn't have pain relief because it was COVID, they were short-staffed, there was no anaesthetist, whatever it might be, but she was coping fine. And that was really upsetting to me because I felt like I have a high pain threshold, but then I thought, well, it shouldn't matter. Like, pain is subjective. So whether you have a high pain threshold or a low pain threshold, if you're in pain, then you should be listened to. So why is it that someone else decides for you if you're coping or not? But I also felt a lot of guilt because I felt very lucky that Alfie was here and he was healthy, and obviously I'd survived. So it took me quite a long time to be able to be like, actually, birth trauma is a thing and we all deserve to be heard, and we all deserve to, when we say we're in pain, for that to be respected. I also later on found out that I'd been stitched up incorrectly as well. That's had an impact on how I'll give birth next time. So I'm having a C-section. I'd say childbirth is a lot harder than I was expecting, and what I get frustrated about is this narrative that if you just do the courses and you do the hypnobirthing and you go in with the right mindset, you know, you'll be fine. And it's almost like overcoming this sense of guilt or failure if you didn't have an easy birth, or you did feel pain, or you did have to have pain relief. Because actually, if I was having a hip replacement and I went into hospital and I was like, lads, I'm gonna do this one without pain relief, people would be like, you're mental. Why do we celebrate only the people that did it without pain relief? Like, it should be celebrated however you give birth. I'm actually really excited to experience a C-section this time, and I still see it as a valid way to give birth. I would say if you are pregnant or thinking about experiencing childbirth, then just have an open mind. Honestly, I have so many friends that had a positive birth, whether that's vaginal or C-section, but also know that if it doesn't go to plan, it is not your fault. It's not because you didn't do the course properly. It's not because you didn't read the books. Like, everybody is different and every baby is different, and lots can happen in that time. So I think just have the confidence to be heard. And if you can, in that postnatal recovery, if you don't get that 6-week physical check, demand it, because we are entitled to it. Because I wouldn't have known that I had prolapse, and I wouldn't have known that I'd been stitched up incorrectly if it wasn't for the fact that I ended up going to see a pelvic health physio. So either you can pay privately, which, by the way, I would say is such a good gift for anyone who gives birth, whether they do C-section or vaginal, because there's so much pressure on our pelvic floors, and I feel like pelvic health is so important for women, and for some reason we're just not really taught about it. There's also an amazing NHS team of pelvic health physios, so you just have to get that referral from the GP. So don't be afraid to demand the physical check. I would say some ways that nourish my mind, body, soul would be to wake up in the morning and put a happy playlist on straight away, because I feel like that shift in your mindset, like music has the ability to just completely transform you. If I don't have time to exercise in the morning, I try to do something throughout the day, even if that's 5 minutes of stretching. So at the moment, I'm not really doing much exercise. I've stopped doing Pilates for now, but I do love a good stretch. And I feel like even just 5 minutes without your phone, without any noise around you, it just feels good. Lavender spray is really nice. Like when I get into bed, I spray it. Tommy hates it, but yeah, it just kind of like resets my mind, like kind of like tells my brain to switch off. I would also say at the moment, because I'm like loving the toddler stage, are like baby cuddles. Like I really look forward to picking him up after he finishes at the childminders, and I put my phone away and I just spend time with him reading a book, and yeah, that's really cute. If I could write a letter to my younger self about my body, I would probably say it's not about how it looks or how small you are. Like beauty, confidence, sexiness, it's a state of mind. It's not from being the most shrunken, smallest version of you. Stop putting pictures on your phone of other people's bodies, because you're never gonna have their bodies. So there's no point in thinking, if I punish myself then I'll look like this, especially if it's a flat-chested person, because you're not gonna look like that no matter how much you exercise. Finally, I would say just think about how lucky we are that we get to experience life, you know, whether that's traveling or hugging or kissing, being able to be pregnant and give birth, if that's something that you want to do. Like all of those things, like your body sees you through that. And it's so cheesy to say, but when you look back on your deathbed, you're never going to think about, thank God I was this clothing size, or thank God I was this weight, or any of that, but you're going to remember the experiences you had and the people that you spent it with. I'm Ashley James, and thank you so much for watching my episode of My Body, My Story.